He's the CEO and founder, and he was ousted. And suddenly, Six Wires was being hostilely taken over. We were one of the many, many, many businesses that got caught up into it. And we're like, okay, is this gonna affect our build? No, okay, we'll continue to pay our invoices, we'll continue to do this. Let's just get this to launch.
Our featured speaker today is the CTO of Kaiko Australia, a startup aiming to reduce the cost of living by harnessing the power of group buying for everyday essentials. She started with Kaiko as a virtual CTO through her consultancy Start with Tinni, which takes non technical founders from floundering to flourishing, helping them navigate the technological landscape of today. Tinny, it's a great pleasure to have you as our featured guest again. Thank you so much for being willing to share this leg of your journey with us.
Glad to be here, and I hope I add some values to your. I think it's Saturday for most people, unless you're in New Zealand and Australia. So that's just myself. Then this is happy Sunday.
I'm pretty sure we have someone from New Zealand on too. So you're not alone. And thank you. Thank you so much for being with us at this hour.
Okay, so I guess I'll get started on so last time we spoke, as I was recalling, was near the end of 2020, and a lot has happened. And I think that pretty much just after I spoke with you guys, or just before, because I think that the podcast was released a little bit later than when we actually had this chat on Discord. That was when I got the call from Kaiko to basically say, hey, we have secured funding, so it's a go. Now, Nancy, you've done a great job of introducing Kaiko, and I just wanted to take this moment to also say, Spencer, congratulations, or not congratulations, but well done on pronouncing my last name properly. So it's a rare occasion, but thank you for that.
I'm glad.
But yeah, so Nancy, you've done a good job of introducing Kaiko. And so basically, when I was spoke to you last, I was involved with a number of startups. So I was involved with Kaiko, I was involved with Josari, as well as I was also providing CIO as CTO type advice to a couple of small businesses. Of them, I'm somewhat sad to say that Josari got to a point where they closed their doors because it was a two-sided marketplace where it was a micro advice platform. And while we always managed to get suppliers on board, we never managed to get the consumers. It wasn't that people couldn't see the value of the platform, they were excited by the platform, but it was too specialized in that you wanted an advice now. And while we thought the video chat was a big feature of it, because it was basically Coro but instant and video, just didn't work out. So that was unfortunate, but these things happen, and I can certainly talk a lot about all the failures of Josari and all what we've learned from that failure if people are interested. But that was that. And then Sports Smarts, one of the small businesses I was working with, they've sort of gone on a pause. It's just the CEO, the founder of Sports Smarts, as is often the case, had to go back to corporate to make money because, he was running out, and which is a lot happens with founders. So that one was a proven concept. It was in demand, but issues with scaling, which is another common founder problem. In a way, it sort of worked out because as these other clients sort of fell off or just shifted and didn't need my help as much, Kaiko just started gaining momentum. So the first thing was that we wanted to build our platform, build our website. At the same time, we were coordinating with a local creative group. So they had many arms. So they had a PR arm, they had a brand identity arm, and they had a media buying arm that included buying social media ads as well as ads in more established media like banner ads on a news websites and other things like that. They were a chief part of our launch. Because of the nature of Kaiko, a group buying, the group has to be significant. So how do you get a lot of attention of a lot of people and get them signed up to the website? So obviously we have to campaign aggressively, and it's not something that can grow organically. We need a lot of buyers. We need a lot of buyers so we can secure deals. So that was the position. That's what we needed to do at the beginning of 2021 as we started the journey to one, build out our platform, build out our website, and also then at the end, and also get our marketing campaign and marketing ducks in a row. Straight away, one of the things that happened was that our board suggested that we get a tech advisor. Now, I was initially under the impression that the tech advisor, now he was a retired from Uber exec who was, he called himself semi-retired, and he was sort of going around the local startup scene and just giving advice and also looking for investment opportunities and so forth. So I was under the impression that he was giving his advisory and his time to us for equity. Like that was his buy in, and he had also contributed some cash. I later learned this was not the case. We were actually paying him a consultancy fee. So straight away, he came and he sort of had this idea, and I kind of feel like November, December 2020 was completely wasted because of him, was that he wanted to design the UI UX himself, but he was not a UI UX person. So he wanted to get an UI UX person and then just micromanage the hell out of them. And remember, at the time, I was still the virtual CTO of Kaiko, not the full time CTO of Kaiko. So I was like, okay, we also need a programmer. And he kept saying that bring the Silicon Valley charm to Brisbane. I will approach developers, I'll lean in and get you the right developers and things like that. So I was doing most of the grunt work, right? So I was going and finding dev targets, like people who were working for Origin and things like that, and passing him the names, and he was going to approach them in a very aggressive sort of way. It did none of that worked because Brisbane is not Silicon Valley. Engineers in Brisbane do not leave Origin Energy to become founders. This is not a aspiration. I mean, you can call it, if you're in the Silicon Valley mindset where everybody wants to be a founder, where everybody wants to be the next Elon Musk, then yes, Brisbane engineers may seem like small fish who are happy to be in small ponds, but that is the environment you're in. You can't do the Silicon Valley whatever you're trying to do. It's the environment is different. So that was a waste. And then it was only when he was gotten rid of that I found out that we had been paying him, and I'm like, what the hell? Why were we paying him? So that was interesting. And but during that process, one of the comments that I kept getting back from my CEO was that, where's our plan? We need a plan. I want a scope that I can see, because he's from a background of buildings. So he's like, where's my blueprint? Eventually, we did end up getting the scoping session we wanted from, after a lot of thinking, and I brought in some engineering teams and other, but who were not selected. But eventually we decided to go with the engineering company of one of his friends, a rugby buddy called 6YS. And 6YS was providing us with what my CEO found comfortable, which was like, we were going to have a scoping session, we were going to sit down with a BA, and we were going to work things out, and then we were going to have a blueprint against which we could build. This is not how normally startups tech is developed, except you have to remember that our tech was pretty basic and pretty well defined. We needed a membership platform. We were not inventing the wheel or reinventing the wheel, because the innovation is in the business model. And the business model is that we give category exclusivity to a provider. So we don't compare energy providers. We get the best deal from a provider. The idea is that as our member base grows, the provider is able to give us a cheaper rate because they have less cost of customer acquisition, and each customer has longer lifetime value. which at the moment is screwed up because of the comparison websites and other and how energy and util insurance and other things are sold, because these companies are continuously having to go after customers because do they have a churn of 30% who are always chasing like the lowest price. But as a result, the 70% that don't churn, they end up having to bear the cost of the churn. So that was the problem we were trying to solve through our business model innovation. But there is no tech innovation as such. It's all pretty simple, with the caveat that our platform needed to handle millions of visitors. Our marketing team assured us that if we follow their campaign strategy and give them the money that they wanted, and the money they wanted was $1 million, they could get us, I think they said something like, I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was like millions of impressions with a pessimistic conversion rate of 30,000 people. And that was going to be over a campaign period of like 2 to 3 months. That would have been great. And if we had that, would be excellent. But I'm going to be upfront with you guys. We're suing that marketing company for damages of 26 million. So let's just say that didn't work out. And it didn't work out because of gross negligence, because that's what we're claiming. So, Nancy, yes, in the 2 years since I've spoken to you, I've become an expert in marketing and sending a lot of emails to lawyers to explain tech and stuff like that. So, but anyway, so getting back to what was happening. So 6YS, we were supposed to get the business analysis and that process done within 30 days. It went for 120 days. There were points where it was like, we should walk away with this from this, but it was also in the middle of the second wave of the pandemic. And we had already spent so much time with this dev that we're like, well, do we want to restart the dev cycle again? Let's just see how this is going. And also, this was a company that had been in business for 16 years, and the CEO of 6YS and my CEO were rugby buddies. They knew each other. So, it was all, if one of those things weren't true, if they were a new dev team or there wasn't a personal connection, we would have walked away a long time ago when they just basically expanded the BA process. And there were also other things. We would have these meetings, and then the next day it would be as if that meeting didn't happen. Every decision that was made in that meeting just disappeared, despite the fact that everybody who needed to be in that meeting was there, including the CEO. But then it was like, what's going on? But eventually we did get what we thought was a decent plan, a tech stack that was what we needed, and it was going to be something that could withstand the media forecasts that our marketing company had given us. So we're like, okay, that's all good. Let's go ahead and start building it. So we start building it, I think, end of August. Within 2 weeks, we get a call and we find out that the CEO of 6YS had been literally backstabbed. There was cloak and dagger things, and he had been brought into his own meeting room on Friday, told, you're an impediment to this business. That's why we have done stuff. Go clear out your desk. He's the CEO and founder, and he was ousted. And suddenly, 6YS was being hostilely taken over. We were one of the many, many, many businesses that got caught up into it. And we're like, okay, is this gonna affect our build? No. Okay, we'll continue to pay our invoices. We'll continue to do this. Let's just get this to launch. While we were doing this, we obviously had to go to providers and cut deals. And we did. We cut a deal with Australia's fourth largest energy provider, and it was a very good deal. It was an excellent deal. So we had a deal, we had a solid marketing strategy, and then we were going to launch in early November. But as we were approaching the launch date, everything looking rosy, our provider backs out last minute because the marketing campaign that our marketing company had put forward was extremely aggressive against comparison websites, specifically Compare the Market, who had a meerkat mascot. Our campaign was extremely anti meerkat. And at that point, that company was like, look, we get 8% of our customers from this comparison website. We don't like them because we feel they harm our bottom line, but we can't afford to lose the 8% we have in hand for potential of getting a higher percentage from you when you are now at 0%. So that marketing company didn't just take $1 million from us and didn't deliver us even close to what they promised. Their marketing assets, the marketing campaigns direction actually cost us the provider. But that happened. And so the provider walked away. We tried to replace the provider last minute. It didn't work out. So we were like, okay, what do we do now? So we thought, okay, look, let's just go to the market anyway, because we have a model and the model is the product. So let's try and build up a membership base, and then that can attract a provider or multiple providers, which it did do. The campaign went live on November 18th, and then the website went live November 18th. So we had a few days to iron out the kinks. And then November 22, I want to say, but whatever, the next Monday after, it launched in earnest, and we started seeing visitors to our website. Everybody started seeing our ads everywhere. And yeah, so it was all looking good, except that the campaign wasn't doing as well as it should. Like, it was falling short of the projected numbers. And it was like, okay, why is this happening? What's going on? And as we were trying to figure out what's wrong with the marketing and if we have to change anything, or if where to put our money, or if we should hold back our money and what else, I wake up one day on a Tuesday and find out that the website had gone down. And it's like, okay, why is the website down? It's not that the website, and why haven't I gotten an alert? Well, it's not that the website was down, it was our entire Microsoft tenancy was down. Okay, what's going on? The other thing about Six Wires was that Six Wires wasn't just a development house. Their primary bread and butter was as a managed service provider. And we had bought our Microsoft tenancy as a managed tenancy through them. And that had been transferred over to the new company that was taking them over. This new company continued to issue us invoices, which we continued to pay. So we were like, what's going on? Is there some sort of technical difficulty? So I actually got a call from a literally newly hired accounts manager, because the company that had taken over Six Wise was growing rapidly, and they were growing rapidly by buying other companies, and Six Wise was one of the people on their list. So I got this call from this completely new guy, and it was literally, I think, his second day on the job. Maybe it might have even been his first. And he's like, oh, something, something, Active Directory problems. We're trying to solve it. I'm like, okay. At this point, it sounded weird, but I'm like, okay, I'd have no reason to distrust you. So I'll buy your excuse, because I don't care what the reason is. I just want my system fixed up. Well, the system wasn't up the entire day. We had to pause ads. We had to do a lot of things, because this happened in the middle of as I said, $1 million campaign. We had handed over $1 million to our marketing company to run ads or buy social media and web ads. Eventually, all day, tenancy still down, website still down. I'm not going to bore you guys with how long it took for the truth to come out, but the truth was simply this. The people who had taken over 6YS wanted to take all the clients, take all the accounts and all the assets, but leave all the liabilities, which meant that they weren't paying the bills. They had gone into debt for $160,000, which in the grand scheme of things isn't a lot. $160,000 with a Microsoft Cloud reseller. That cloud reseller, after trying to get money every other way, decided to just turn off the tenancy of 250 small to medium businesses, and Kaiko was one of them.
Hi there. If you're enjoying this podcast, would you mind leaving us a review, a like, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform? Thanks so much. That really helps our reach. The Founders Voyage podcast is now proudly sponsored by VidOps. Kane at VidOps has been taking care of our editing since early 2024. He works efficiently, and I'm sure you'll agree that he does a great job. Thank you to VidOps for helping bring this podcast to life. If you want the same great support we're getting for your podcast, or you need help with video, photography, or animation, you can get 10% off at vidops.io using our referral code Voyage. That's vidops.io, referral code Voyage. Now back to the show.
That story is a roller coaster already.
They ended up redoing our entire tenancy with a different cloud reseller. At the same time, how do you trust a managed service provider whose invoices you've been paying on time and in full without fail, but who in turn was not actually passing on the money you were giving them to their vendors? Because that's what it was. They didn't want to pay the old vendors. They wanted to kill 6YS, gut it, take all its assets, take all its clients, and leave a carcass full of debt. The management who signed off on this didn't care that their reckless actions was going to have an effect on the end clients, which included us. That actually ended up being a saga on its own. And some of the emails I exchanged with the lawyers involved how we were going to get out of the contracts, because we actually signed a fairly long contract with 6YS for them to be our managed service provider. But, to how to get out from under the thumb of this new company who we had not contracted, who had just taken over our contract and all our deals, and then squandered our good faith, because we did, I mean, honest to God, we did try to give these guys a fair chance, but there's no coming back from not having a website for 48 hours during what was going to be a middle of a busy campaign. And we were actually the lucky ones, because we actually found out information on other people who were affected, including this really nice lady who had been with 6YS for 7 years, and she didn't have her website for close to 3 months. And she was like a small business owner. She was like a hairdressing school out of Gold Coast. December, January is the kind of time when people, decide to change careers or decide they want to start something new. And her entire business website was down. And apparently, when she tried to contact the relevant execs to figure out what's going on, they swore at her in writing. The end result of all that is that we are out of, I did manage to eventually get us out of under them. Our lawyers are now compiling or might have already lodged a group complaint to the ombudsman. I think it's going to be ASIC and some other people whoever the inspectors are in this case, and go, okay, here's, these guys have been acting unethically and they have affected clients. They have tried to basically extort money from us, because in a lot of ways it was extortion, and acted in bad faith. That was the IT drama, and that was a lot. But it was around that time that I got made the full-time CTO of Kaiko. And I think it was around that time when everybody sort of in Kaiko decided that if there was one person in Brisbane in IT they could trust, it was probably me, because we had been screwed over by, just everybody else. Because up until then, I was still like a consultant to Kaiko. And at that point, it was like, no, just come on in, be part of the full-time team, get us out of this predatory assholes, and let's go on.
That makes a lot of sense, but I'm sorry that it happened in such a painful way. Do you mind if I kind of interject a little bit of a question? I can tell some of this, you're still going through it and it's still pretty fresh. And I'm really sorry that it is still, the painful part is still kind of going on of suing them. But you've definitely been through an eventful couple of years and, congratulations for what you've been able to achieve at Kaiko. And going back to kind of, the theme of trust that you were telling me has been very present throughout your recent journey. I was wondering if at this juncture, if there's any sort of lesson you would like summarize from this experience. Cause I know a couple years ago when we spoke, you're pretty optimistic in your approach to trust, and I appreciate that. So if you want to talk about how that's changed a little bit or just kind of your takeaway.
Pretty optimistic. At the same time, I think that with the IT thing, I want to say that what we could measure and we could figure out were good. Like we didn't get bad code, we didn't get a unwieldy system that was out of date or everything. Everything tech was top notch. We might have been overpaid for it a bit because we ended up finding out later that there were layers of management that didn't need to be there, that had been obscured from us, but that was a business sort of thing. No time could we have figured that a company that's been in business for 16 years was secretly in trouble and had literally opened themselves up to a predator, because that's what happened. Because at one point they had run into some cash flow issues. So to solve the short-term cash flow issues, they went into bed with people who ended up turning out to be wolves in sheep's clothing, and they had literally turned around and tore their neck out. And there's no way as a client could have foreseen that, because that involved information that even their inner circle wasn't fully aware of. The marketing one is a bit more interesting in that there was always some weirdness, because there was for me there was always this thing where everything they were doing felt a bit disjointed. For example, I would talk to the media buying lady and I would talk about PR and SEO, and then she would sort of be almost dismissive of it. And then I was like, but aren't we supposed to take a holistic approach to this? But then I'm not a marketing salesperson, right? Part of finding partners and part of finding fellow co-founders is that you have to trust in the other person's expertise. And I don't know how you can foresee that, especially when you are not yourself an expert in that area, because you run into two dangers, right? So you can get into the Dunning-Kruger thing where you overestimate your expertise and you continuously argue with an actual expert until you get to a point where all the experts have left and all you're left with is yes people, because they know you're gonna just override them despite the fact that you don't have the expertise. Or you trust the experts. You trust the experts, and then you sometimes too late find out what's going on. In our case, we were continuously flagging that the numbers they were showing, by we I mean my boss, my CEO Trond, he was continuously flagging the fact that the numbers didn't make sense, that they shouldn't be happy with the performance that they said was actually doing well because the projections were off. He was continuously questioning that, but the answer was always sometimes marketing takes a bit of time. You need to warm up the audience and then the results will come. And as I said, there was also some, I guess you could call them false positives. So we launched in end of 2021, and while we didn't get the member numbers that we wanted, we did attract a new provider. And then Christmas came around, and so we paused everything. We decided to approach the new year in 2022 with a clean slate. We thought we had figured everything out with the IT people, and we were willing to work with them to do a relaunch, to do a not a relaunch, but a part two of the launch. And we now had another provider who also gave us an excellent deal. And then, and at this point, while we had some more questions about the marketing team and we didn't trust them quite as explicitly, we did trust them enough that we wanted to have another go. Yona, you had a question for me, so please go ahead and ask before I continue the story.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Maybe more a comment than a question. I know I have been doing marketing for the last years as a marketing consultant, and that's a little bit like a story from, going to a doctor who tells you that you are don't think you need to get the surgery right away, but then you go to the next doctor and they told you, actually, you can wait another 2 years. And I think the same is for marketing. What usually I suggest my potential clients would be to check it out with somebody else, because I heard lots of stories around this also here in Switzerland. A company telling you need to pay 100,000 francs or USD in this case for like a very short marketing campaign. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Let's check it out with someone else. So I think the lesson would be exactly like the one with the doctors, like just go and check another marketing agency. And for me, like one comment what I observed also from the startups in here, the best marketing thing you can do for your company is to have a marketing person, in your company and not as an external agency if you build up something from the ground, because then people also feel extremely responsible for what they're doing and they take full accountability. So that is my 2 cents on this.
It's funny you should mention that because we went with the marketing agency we did after getting bids from a number of different agencies. So we presented our case to a number of different agencies. At the end of it, we chose them. We didn't go with the first marketing agency, more or less, but we actually ran an extensive bidding process, or by we, I mean my boss, Trond. And also he was advised on that entire process by Damien Rossi. I'm just gonna drop Damien's LinkedIn page on the chat section. And Damien is an extremely experienced marketing executive. He was ex News Corp. He's one of our board members, and he was acting as our CMO through this entire process, a chief marketing officer for those who didn't know. I understand what you're saying, Ioana, but that was one of our things where we had Damien, who is literally a marketing expert, advising us. And Damien had worked with the company that we had gone with in the past. The issue that we ended up finding is that, which gives me a cue to continue our story, is that we stuck with the marketing agency that we were with, and we decided to go for a round two, this time with a deal. And they did not perform better. At which point we broke our contract with them and they sent us their final bills, or they sent us all, and including some, they were literally billing us for work they hadn't done but that had been put in the contract. This is what triggered for us to review all their numbers, because we didn't want to, we wanted to dispute these invoices because we felt that we hadn't gotten the work that had been promised to us. And that's when we found out in the numbers by doing almost a forensic accounting on the numbers. And I want to say I didn't have any part in this. This was all the work of our COO and our in-house accountant. And what we found was that they were literally lying to us. In black and white, they were lying to us, because in our media plan, they said that they were going to run a specific kind of Facebook campaign that's a bit expensive, but it's supposed to give you good quality leads. They didn't run that Facebook ad, or they didn't get the results they projected on that Facebook campaign. So instead, they ran a different kind of Facebook campaign that is very good for impressions, but they are low quality leads. And yeah, so we basically, in black and white, we can show in a court of law, which is why we're proceeding with the court case, that they were dishonest. They misrepresented their capabilities, what they could have gotten. Because we had a tender process of sorts, we believe that they lied to make their numbers look better, so they would win our work against the other agencies we were looking at. Then they did whatever they needed to do to fuzz the numbers to make it look as if they were actually delivering when they were not. Now, I actually asked Damien, what would have happened if a campaign like this failed for one of your other clients? And he basically said that it is actually very rare in the marketing world to go back and look at the numbers and do what we did to compare what was projected and what was actually delivered, because if this had been, I don't know, News Corp or one of his bigger corporate clients, then they would have just written off the marketing expense and gone again, because they would have just gone, okay, the campaign didn't work. Too bad. Consumers are fickle. Let's try something else. But what actually happened was that the marketing agency just not only failed, they knew they were failing, but instead of owning up and giving us the full picture, they actually tried to hide the fact, and that's why we're suing them. Like,
I know, but I also think that you were just extremely unlucky. You were just extremely unlucky in this case, really. Okay, happy that you at least take the legal steps, because I think that's also important as a example for other agencies not to do these things.
yeah, I know that we were extremely unlucky and this was a terrible situation, but like as I was telling you, Nancy, is that I don't know how to build more trust when you don't have the expertise. But in our case, we literally did have the expertise. Damien had past experience with that agency, but it's just there, you can't protect yourself against blatant lies like this, right? And in this particular case, the agency was just lying. And until the end, they didn't acknowledge that there was a problem, even when the numbers were telling them there was a problem. That, I think, is how do you do that? How do you do that as a founder? And I think, yeah, that if there's any advice that anything to take away as a founder is that the numbers don't lie. Like whatever you're doing, you have to evaluate and you have to do it. So if you're not getting the customers you want, if you're not getting the raw numbers, then you have some hard decisions to make. And that, in our case, that meant cutting our marketing people and going again. So Kaiko is relaunching, and we're relaunching by going to doing a more grassroots campaign and going a more PR and organic method. So Trond, my CEO, is actually heading to Towns Tuomba, which is the number one city for mortgage stress, and Cairns, which is up north and has a high cost of living issues. He's going there to try and sell the model to the people and hopefully attract media attention that will get the model and the innovation that we're trying to do in front of everyday Australians. And hopefully that'll get us the buy-in.
That's so exciting.
Yeah, it is. It really is. But also going back to the numbers, if we do all those things and if we hit our targets and we don't get the numbers, then that's also a lesson for us, is that no matter how good the model is and how much we believe in it, if we can't sell the model, we have to shut our doors and think about something else. But that was, I think, one of the saddest part of the first campaign, is because, as I said, I've been writing a lot of emails to lawyers, and a part of that has been to look back at everything that we've done, all the material that was produced for us. And I realized that they didn't even attempt to sell the model. They never attempted to sell the innovation. What they actually ended up doing was doing this almost cutesy thing. They wanted to go against, as I said, the comparison websites. And yes, if our model works, it will put the comparison websites out of business. But that's not the innovation we're bringing to the market. That's sort of like the consequence. So I'll actually link one of the campaigns that the first marketing company put together for us. It's a video. It's a pretty short video, but it will probably give you the kind of tone that they were going for. And the mascot in that video is called the Kaiko Hero. I'm not entirely sure that the Kaiko Hero was right for our demographic, the demographic that we were going after, but that was a brilliant idea from the first marketing campaign. And yeah, look, part of the court case has involved us hiring a expert witness, and the expert witness had nothing good to say about our first campaign, including the documentation like the media plan and media projection that they produced. And as I said, the animated characters, I think that was the thing. The characters would be appealing to millennials and other people, but our initial marketing campaign that started Trond on a 5-year project, 5-year journey to try and bring Kaiko to life, identified the Kaiko's core client as somebody a little bit older who would not necessarily get the Kaiko hero. Honestly, we actually got a lot of backlash, not just from the fact that we had a provider walk away from us because they didn't want to go up against Compare the Market and their Meerkat mascot, but we actually had a lot of backlash from the millennials who this ad was supposed to target because they like the Meerkat mascot. They have emotional attachment to this meerkat because they've been seeing this meerkat all over Brisbane and all over Australia and all over their feeds. And the last thing I want to say is that the campaign didn't quite work out, but looking forward to the new relaunch. So
One thing, especially since you're going for a relaunch, one thing I really thought is very interesting is a lot of companies, a lot of founding teams that went through such a roller coaster of an experience would sort of fall apart from it, I imagine, based on my perspective. What do you think it is about the team that's let you stay together and keep working together and relaunching at this point?
a lot of it is Tron, the CEO. Now, Tron Smith, he has a great story and he's overcome a lot. Like, I wish I could point you to a one page article on him, but unfortunately, I can't. But one of the things he did was that he helped a friend of his take on a oil and gas giant and win. And they won against this oil and gas giant by harnessing the power of the media and political movement. Basically, to keep a long story short, this oil and gas giant destroyed a business of one of Tron's friends. Like, it went from a $1 million turnover to literally zero because of the actions, environmentally damaging actions of this oil and gas giant. This friend of Tron's was functionally illiterate. He was basically going to end up homeless and nothing else. And then he called up Tron, and Tron picked up the phone and basically helped his friend get a settlement from this oil and gas giant. And prior to that, he had a world record, like, it's been confirmed as a world record high cortisol levels, and he was literally going to drop dead any minute. And while he was on rest, his subordinates betrayed him and destroyed his then business, which had a $9 million turnover. And he sort of persisted through all of that. So he found a way to salvage what he could from his business, and he helped his friend take on this oil and gas giant. And while he was actually helping him take on this oil and gas giant, that's when he discovered that there are unfair hidden commissions in the Australian sales model, and that's why he wanted to do Kaiko. So this has been his life for quite some time. So that's why I think that, when you have gone through all that, it's kind of easy to see why he would persist. And as for the rest of us, I mean, I don't want to get ripped off, and I don't like unfairness. So if there is a better way to buy everyday energy and lower our cost of living in an ethical way, then sure, I want to smash the system and go from there. Now, as I said, I can't get everything. There is no write-up of Tron's entire story. We were supposed to do one, but we ended up not doing it. Shared another link with you guys, was that earlier this year, one of our not so, it didn't quite work out, way to promote Kaiko was to launch this adjacent campaign called the Great Australian Ripoff. And around the time we were getting PR, trying to get PR for the Great Australian Ripoff, the Australian Consumer Commission actually handed down a multi-million dollar fine for misleading customers through Trivago, which is a comparison site for travel. And so the link I shared with you shows my CEO sort of trying to explain some of the problems we're trying to solve. And I think that's a good introduction to my boss.
Yeah, I was gonna say I feel like it could be a mini series at some point, or like a, a documentary on Netflix, a tell all if you ever get to that point.
Here's hoping that Kaiko takes off and we're all exit having changed the landscape of Australian consumer buying, and then Netflix can come and interview us on boats, on yachts and beaches, and
I want us as fingers crossed and toes. Definitely. Well, I know it's been, quite a journey, and I know there was a lot we didn't get to today. But being mindful of the time, I was wondering, if you had sort of some words of wisdom that you do want to leave us with today. So last time we featured you, you said communication is the key to success. Just find the right people and make sure you communicate well with them. So I was wondering what you want to leave us with today.
I guess so. Since we're talking about trust, I would probably just say that just because you ran into some shady people doesn't mean that you shouldn't trust. Be aware that they're shady people. And, as long as you try to do the right thing, I guess, do your due diligence. But as I said, some of the pitfalls we fell into, there was literally no way of seeing this. Don't give up too early is probably another one because, we're still going, we're still trying, and hey, it may not work out, but we're still trying.
If the raisin toast gets burnt, make a new batch. No, I'm just kidding. I appreciate that you've maintained your optimism. It's a lot to go through that and still have your spirit.
So, since you brought up the raisin toast getting burnt, that is the advice I want to leave you guys with, is that know when the toaster is broken. And I kind of feel that if there's anything I would have redone last 2 years, is that I probably would have, like, it's one of those things because obviously hindsight is 2020, but I kind of feel that there was at least one or two red flags, at least with the IT company, that I probably should have not. I didn't ignore them. It's more that I didn't pick it up and just wave it more aggressively, because I did flag them, but then I was like, but then when an excuse was given, I sort of like, okay, I'll keep an eye on this, but let's move on. But ultimately, though, our biggest problem was the marketing company. As I said, I really don't know how we could have saved ourselves from this deception.
Identifying when you need to separate yourselves and throw the toaster away. I appreciate that. As someone that just tried to revive their coffee maker that died, that is a very relevant analogy to me. Trying to salvage things can be a waste of time and energy. And yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much for making time for this and for everything you shared with us and taught us today. And thank you everyone who joined, and those of you who stuck with us 12 minutes over the hour. We really appreciate your perspective and the energy you bring to these discussions and this community. The team behind Founders Voyage feel very fortunate to have this going for 2.5 years. And we would love to have you join us again next week. It will be a little bit earlier, so keep an eye on the announcements channel for that. And in the meantime, we invite you to nominate other people for future Saturday guest sessions to be fellow community members. And if you'd like to support Founders Voyage as it becomes a podcast, you can donate that through our Patreon. But thank you so much again, Tinni, and everyone for joining us. And we hope you have a great day and a great evening ahead.
Thank you so much, Tinny.
Thanks.
I hope next time we're interviewing you, you'll be talking to us from your yacht or personal.
Here's hoping.
Or whatever your picture of paradise is. Yeah.
You've just finished another episode of Founders Voyage, the podcast for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. The team at Founders Voyage wants to thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We hope you enjoyed your time with us, and if so, please share this with someone else who might enjoy this podcast. You can also support us by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and by donating to our Patreon. Outro music today is Something for Nothing by Reverend Peyton's Big Damn Band.